My name is Rose Amador LeBeau. I am President and CEO of CTC. Our mission is to help people through employment and education become self-sufficient. We have a day worker center. We have educational programs so people can get their GEDs. We serve a variety of people, people who've just become unemployed, people who have never worked. We work with homeless people. We work with people who have just gotten out of prison and have to re-enter the workforce. So we're full service. I think it's seeing people make the change, become successful, make that transition, and actually having an impact on people's lives, a positive impact. To see these success stories is what it's all about. Hello, I'm Rose Amador LeBeau, and this is Native Voice TV.
And I'm Craig Pasqua, co-host, Native Voice TV.
Yes, welcome to the show. We have a very special guest with us today, Techicuauhtli Ray Baeza. Welcome.
Hello, it's good to be back here.
And I'm glad you're back. You were here about a year ago, and we had so much that we learned from you, and you had more to say, and we had to cut you off. But I promised to bring you back, and so you're back, and we're going to continue where we left off. I can't remember where that was, but we'll find it. But I'm glad you're here.
Good to be back here.
And if you could tell us on your indigenous background?
Well, on my father's side, I'm from, my family comes from Chihuahua, Mexico. Raramuri country, the Spanish called them Tarahumaras, and on my mother's side, Tiano, Hawaiian. And yeah, they met. My dad was in the Navy, and he was stationed at Pearl Harbor for a while, and that's where he met my mom. So the rest is history.
And here you are.
Two coasts,
Yeah.
Hawaii, Tiano, over here in the Caribbean.
Yeah, yeah.
So we understand Columbus stopped there first?
On his way to India. And he thought the Tainos were the Indians.
That's where he started doing damage.
That's
where he started, you know. Yeah, he came across the, you know, his first two voyages and stuff, but he came into the island of Quisqueya, which today is called the Dominican Republic, Haiti.
Oh, okay.
In the Taino language, it's called Quisqueya. And then later in the second voyage, he came around to Boriquen, known as Puerto Rico nowadays.
Right.
And, you know, that was where basically the Holocaust of this continent began, you know, so.
You know, let me ask you this. You said you were from Chihuahua, or your roots, and then you hear Native American. Isn't Mexico part of the Americas, and being Native, wouldn't that be considered Native America? How come you hear these different things?
Well, you know, myself, I don't like using the term American, like Native American or American Indian, those kind of terms, because Native people are not.
Right.
You know, they're whatever the tribe is that you're from, you know. So it's a certain level of colonialism that, and being a conquered people, all of us, that those kind of things are still there, you know. So yeah, I just Native.
And the borders weren't there.
No, the borders weren't there.
The borders weren't there, so there was.
We were like the eagle eye view, you know. You look down, you don't see no borders. You just see the rivers and the mountains and the lakes and those things like that. You know, you don't see borders. You see all these people running around doing their life, and you know, they're not called wetbacks or spics or anything else. You know, those are just the two-leggeds on this planet. You know, on this earth, and our ancestors from all the different tribes had a lot of interaction. You know, a lot of interaction. You know, we didn't have cars in those days, so you know, we walked. You know, and walked up and down this entire continent. You know, and got to know, we traded the different things that come from our respective regions. You know, we traded a lot of things. You know, in Mexico, for example, there's a lot of the jade and also turquoise mines in different parts of Mexico, and we've seen in what's today the United States some of these things found where they dig up, you know, in ruins or different areas. You know, they found things. They go, this tribe here didn't have those, you know, but we traded.
Right.
You know, so when our Techicuauhtli came up, our traders came up and carried these things and feathers and, you know, whatever things that we made, we traded, and then we traded with the different tribes and stuff like that. You know, so you know, so there was and there was also ceremonial things that we shared with each other and stuff. You know, we would come up this way, make friends and establish relationships. You know, our native ancestors of all different tribes spoke more than just one language.
Right.
You know, a lot of times the Tlatoanis or chiefs of our people spoke 5, 6, 7 languages. You know, and to be able to relate to the other tribes and to the leaders of the other tribes like that. You know, so that's another big thing that because of colonialism we've lost.
Right.
You know, we've lost not only our own one language that belongs to us, but all the other languages that we know to be able to, you know, relate with other tribes, you know, like that.
And this cultural sharing too wouldn't be possible if we had a wall between us now.
Right.
So
That's right.
so some of the tribal or the vestiges of colonization, you know, are still exist today, and I can see how, you know, you don't want to be labeled as a Native American or Native this or that, but and that's going on among the American Indians too. And a lot of them refer to themselves just tribal,
Yeah.
and they refer to their tribe. Like in my case, would be Chalagi or Paiute.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
but and that's how you identify yourself sometimes. But
Yeah. And that's the way it should be. You know?
Absolutely.
And because there's so many tribes, you know, like a lot of people, they think about Mexico, for example, and they probably, well, Mexico is Aztec and Mayans. Well, there's Tzetzal, Tzotzil, Cholas, Mayos, Rararmi, you know, there's so many, Huicholes, Yaqui, even the Kickapoo have a area of land in central Mexico that was given to them.
And a lot of those tribes are on both sides of the border.
There's some on the borders, yeah. You know, the Tono'odham are on the U.S. and Mexican borders.
Right,
you know.
the Yaquis and the Kickapoo, they're all on both sides.
Apaches,
yeah,
you know, there's so
absolutely.
many, you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's a lot of history, you know, that we don't know, or in the general population has been twisted, and you know, so many lies told about all of our different peoples, you know. You know, the Mexicans, you know, were those lazy ones always sleeping, leaning against the cactus, sleeping all day long and stuff, you know. I mean, there's so many stereotypes, you know, that cause our young people growing up to be ashamed of who they are. They don't want to speak Spanish, which is not our native tongues, but, you know, it was something that we had to fight for. And so there's a certain ownership of that, because even speaking Spanish, a lot of youngsters were hit in schools and definitely told, no, you cannot do that. You cannot use that language. You know,
That's pretty much been the case with all indigenous people too, though, with the languages. And that's why there's not a lot of people, indigenous people, that speak their own language a lot. Some of the elders, and then they have been passing it down because of the punishment that they had to experience growing up trying to speak their own language.
Yeah.
You know, just torture, not just punishment.
The main way of destroying a culture is by taking their language and taking their land. You know, if you lose the language and you don't have your land base anymore, where your ancestors are buried, the sacred areas where you go and do ceremony and those things, then if you don't have those, or even the languages to be able to sing songs that invoke our relatives when we do ceremony and things like that, it's like, if you don't have that anymore, what are you? what do you become? You become a brown version of the dominant culture.
Yes.
So I really feel so good when I hear different tribes, having starting up their language programs and trying to save them, and taking advantage of the elders that are still alive and still there to help learn the language and stuff, and then the younger ones teaching it once again once they learn it.
Right.
I wish it would have started a lot earlier, but at least it's happening in a lot of different places now. So that's really important.
And there should be these schools for the kids, how the Greeks have the schools, or Jewish people have schools for
Sure.
their kids to retain the language. There should be a place where our kids can go and learn the language from the time they're
Yes.
small, learn the culture, learn the customs, the ceremonies, and so forth. So that way they know that they do have a rich heritage, and this is, the mainstream culture is not their
Yeah.
heritage,
Yeah.
and that's why I think a lot of times they feel lost because they can't really identify.
Right. Yeah. Well, to me, learning the language and the language programs are more important than establishing casinos. Because those language programs are going to help assure survival of the tribe.
Right.
And the ceremonial ways, because the language and ceremonies are so interconnected. You can't have one without the other. And again, using the language and the songs to invoke our ancestors, to call upon our ancestors to come and be with us, to help us, to help us in this day and age, this time that we're in now. So even the Nahuatl language, is kind of having people are starting to learn that again. It's the most widely spoken native language on the entire continent.
Is it?
Yes, the Nahuatl languages, and there's probably, I heard up to maybe 8 to 10 million Nahuatl speakers, both in Mexico and Central America, and in smaller numbers here in the United States. But that's also under attack, like any other language and stuff. So, and there's a couple of universities and programs that have been underway for a long time to learn the language, to teach it.
Do they have that in the
diffuse
United
it.
States? The language, they teach the language?
They probably have it in small little pockets and stuff, I've even heard they have some of the Nahuatl language in a couple of universities now, which I was surprised when I first heard that, and happy at the same time,
Yes, absolutely.
that it's there, even if it is at a university, at least it's there, so, yeah.
Wow, that's great.
Mhm.
Well, I think it's definitely necessary, and we should really encourage groups to learn their language. And I know you've done a lot in the community with Techicuauhtli. Now, we're going to take a real short break, but when we come back, I'd like to learn a little bit about Techicuauhtli, the Mexica New Year's
Okay.
that your group puts on annually, and how big it's grown. But let's take a quick short break. We'll be right back. You're watching Native Voice TV, and we're talking with Techicuauhtli about the Mexica culture and some of the activities that have been going on in the community. So let us know about the Mexica New Year's. What is that all about? It's pretty big here in San Jose, I know that.
Yeah, it's gotten pretty big. I think we're about in our, I can't remember now, 16th or 18th year, doing it here in San Jose. Calpulli started in 2004.
Which is
well, we're a cultural group, a cultural family. We're trying to learn our different aspects of our culture, our history, ceremonies, and to live it, not just to learn it and then go back to being whatever, but to live it, and so the ceremony celebration has grown it's gotten pretty big now. Probably the largest Mexica New Year ceremony in the country, I'm hearing.
I read that too.
Yeah.
Recently, after the last New Year, I read this is the largest one in the nation.
Yeah, and there's a couple of like new areas that people are starting to celebrate it and have that ceremony as well, which is good. I mean, own it. You know, it's a cultural patrimony. You know,
Now,
and
it's you say Mexica ceremony, but a lot of people know it as the Aztec New Year's because people have heard and seen the Aztec calendar, right?
yeah.
But they normally, and we're talking about our viewing audience, they don't know what Mexica is, or, you know, so can you
Yeah.
explain some of that?
Well, yeah, we call it Azteca Mexica New Year because the Aztecas were the, I'm trying to look for the right word, precedent? The ones that before,
Oh.
the ones that came before. And the Mexica were like the last tribe that came into Mexico, you know, and the history of the what we call the Tonalmachiot, what people call the Aztec calendar, goes back centuries, you know, hundreds and probably thousands of years.
Now, I always grew up hearing that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that it was more accurate than the Gregorian calendar, that it was more precise. Is that correct?
Oh yes, the Gregorian calendar is actually pretty imprecise, and the more time you go, like if you know, from if you go 100 years, then it gets thrown off even more. You know, yeah, it's been called probably the most accurate calendar in the history of the world. You know. The Mexica along with the Mayan calendars, which are pretty much the same. They just have some little differences, but they're pretty much aligned. And there's several calendars. I mean, the Mayans have like I think like 18 or 20 different types of calendars. You know, the Mexica also have other calendars as well. You know, so and they all kind of work together. You know, like those wheels and the gears and stuff. So the Tonalmachiot was basically a kind of like a agricultural calendar, you know, helped us with the seasons and when to plant, when to harvest, what crops to plant at certain times of year, that kind of thing. And you know, it's now been, and it's 365.25 days, so 365 and a quarter days. Which you know, that's already a quarter more than the Gregorian calendar, right? And so by adding that quarter of a day, which is about 6 hours every year, you don't have to make adjustments like for leap year and that kind of thing. This year is the year for Tecpat, for Flint. Now we Tecpat, for Flint, and the numbers and those things all have different meanings. You know, the 4, of course, is you know, is a very sacred number to our people. It represents like integration. You know, talking about the 4 directions, talking about the 4 elements of life: earth, water, wind, fire. You know, that make up the elements of life for all of us. And there's energy and power that comes from the 4 directions, that comes to each living human being, no matter where you are at in the world. And we absorb those powers and those energies and stuff. And so that's what I mean by integration, you know. And it's part of the natural way of understanding things, you know, of understanding life. One reason why people get so out of balance is because we're no longer look at ourselves as part of nature, you know, but as the dominators of nature. Right. You know, the dominant society wants to dominate nature, and they screw everything up when they do that, you know, but we understand that we are part of nature. And so we have the respect for the animals, for the plants, for the trees, the mountains, the rivers, and the streams, and like that, you know. And so that's the 4. And then the Tecpat is one of the, every year we have different years, you know. We have the Tecpat, which is the flint. We just came out of Acat, which is reed or bamboo. Next year will be Kali, house. And then the year after that will be Tochtli, or rabbit. and then they repeat. Those are the four
Oh, okay.
4 years that we have, and there are also day signs on the calendar. There's the 20 day signs on the Tonal Mashiot, and 18 months that of 20 days each. Called in Spanish, they call it a veintena. And so that's 365 days, and then every year, like this year, Tecpat begins at sunset. Okay, basically when the sun goes down. Next year, Kali will begin at midnight. The following year, Tochtli, Kali Tochtli begins at about 6 a.m. Sunrise, and then Akat at midday. So it's 6 hours every day. It advances the calendar, and so that makes it a very pretty precise tool. And it's also one of the things that are used when we do the study for our names. The Tonalpukis are the ones that do the studies, use the Tonal Mashiot as well as some of the ancient codices.
And it's based on your birth date and time?
Yeah, with your date of birth and your time of birth, our ancestors were bad. They were scientists, and they figured out over the years that with that information, they can figure out what kind of person you're going to be. You're the good, the bad, and the ugly. Your abilities, strong points, weak points, and stuff like that. And then they use that information, like with the children, to help guide them in life. Not to tell them, well, you're going to be a warrior, or you're going to be an astronomer, or you're going to be this and that. Not to tell them what they're going to be, but just to help guide them, to bring the most out of what already has been shown, what their essence is, And I've seen dozens of the studies that have come out, my own, I'm sure yours, and others, that when that information is given, it is right on. I mean, it tells who you are, what you are, and I mean, it was just amazing. The first time I was made aware of it, and even looked at mine, I showed it to my wife, and she goes, "Oh my God, that's you to a T." Everything. And then other people I've looked at, and it's like, this is amazing. It's just so precise on how they can identify who you are and not know you. They never seen you from, until today. But here's your study. Boom, 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 bam, bam. This is who you are. Your strong points, your weak points, and things like that. So it's really quite amazing, Well,
the naming ceremony has become very big, right? I mean, I think you moved into a different day because there were so many people going through the ceremony.
Yeah, and we don't really have any, like a set thing, or depends when Maestro, usually we have our Maestro Silocoat from Mexico, when he comes up, and we try to do a naming ceremony every year, but sometimes we're not able to, and there's so many people that are trying to reclaim that part of their heritage.
Which is good.
Yeah, it's a good thing, because the name is not just a name, it's a responsibility, because you have to live up to that name, and maybe an ancestor may have carried that name before, so you need to carry it in a good way, in a strong way, and so there's teachings and stuff that goes along the whole process of getting the name. We try to let people know, don't go bragging, or don't be, oh, I'm this and that, No, you are who you are. Carry that in a good way, carry it responsibly, and try to live what and who you are, and that tonal, that study for your name helps you to understand and know yourself a lot better. Like that. So.
Well, we only have 2 minutes left. I hate to say that, but if you could tell us quickly the actual the day of the ceremony. It starts with the sunrise and.
Yeah. So we had it on. As I said, this year the sunrise, the New Year's on March 11th, and we did a sunrise ceremony on March 12th. It begins at Well, we're out there at like 4:30 in the morning to get a fire going. The fire is actually a fire that we do sweat lodge, temazcal, before that, and so the fire from the sweat lodge is saved, and it's guarded by fire keepers within the group, or what we call Chicomecoats, the ones who carry, the ones you see with the copal doing the smudging and smoking down the sacred space and everywhere like that. So so they save that fire and bring it, and we light the ceremonial fire on Saturday, and then it goes out through Sunday, and we keep it until the end of the activities there.
And you do it annually.
Yes, we do it annually. We invite relatives from the Zuni Nation, Ohlone Nation, the Pomo Nation, to come and ceremony, to pray with us, you know.
We'll
like
be
that.
out there again with you. We were
Okay.
there this year, we'll be there next year, and we hope you at home will join us next year with the Mexica ceremony. Thank you for being here and sharing all of your wealth of knowledge with us.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Great. And thank you for joining us. Thanks for being here, Craig.
Thank you.
Helping me out.
Yeah, no, I've learned a lot. Thank you both.
Thank you.
We'll see you next week on Native Voice TV. Like us on Facebook. See you next week.